Self-love. Do you love yourself? Do you feel like you want to love yourself more, but can't? I'll make a bold statement and then try to unpack this a little bit. But the statement is that you don't really need self-love. Or that self-love isn't really what you want, probably. So to unpack this, we could look at it from like a non-dual perspective, which is not really the point of this video. But from a non-dual perspective, you could say that self-love is kind of dualistic, right? Like you'd almost have to stand apart from yourself and imagine yourself a certain way, or imagine a version of yourself and then love that or not love that. And the self that you're imagining, or the version of you that you're imagining, or whatever the object of your imagining that is being loved, is apart from whatever's doing the loving, or apparently, right? That it almost sets up this sense of duality. And that is one sort of angle to approach it and kind of feel into the whole thing. But that's not really the point I want to make about this. It really isn't. The point I want to make about this is that it's very, very common that we come to this place when we're doing shadow work and so forth, where we feel like, I just don't know how to love myself, or I wish I could love myself. And it feels very real. Like I'm not saying that that's not a real perception. But what I'm saying is that if you look deeply into the perception, you may find that it's not actually love that you want. So here's what I think actually happens. We often have traumas, or we have experiences growing up where as a child we realize or experience that the love we want or the love we need is not fully available. And this happens for all kinds of reasons, but having mind-identified parents is the kind of core reason. And then that can play out in all kinds of ways, including violence and abandonment and stultification and all these different parenting, let's say anomalies or whatever, these existential wounds that occur as a result of our parents just not being totally available. But another part of it is really that we are also mind-identified, and the identified mind has this like endless or almost endless corridor of time, such that reflections of unmet needs from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago still echo in consciousness today. And they feel like something that's real and relevant and happening right now, even though they are, again, reflections of something that happened many, many decades ago. And so what I think happens often is that we reflect on the sense of being loved at some point by a parent, and remember what it feels like to be totally engulfed in love. Now, when I say remember, you may literally remember this, or you may just remember some version of it that's been echoed through consciousness that has morphed and changed over time and is now taking the shape of whatever's happening in your life now. So I want to be clear that you may not actually realize that that's what you're experiencing, but you may be experiencing the sort of lack of, or the need for that feeling of being totally enclosed, enveloped, protected, taken care of by love, by a parental love. And when you're an infant, when you're a toddler, you need that. It's absolutely part of your, it's required for your well-being. You need to have co-regulation. You need to be taken care of. You need all your needs met without even asking, when you're young enough. And that's the role of a parent, and that loving interaction that gives you everything you need. And at that stage of life, again, of course, it's totally necessary. And as you grow older, it becomes less and less necessary for well-being. That kind of love, the kind of love where everything is taken care of for you, where you don't have to make decisions, where the warmth and care and tenderness is like automatically applied to you without asking, without seeking it out, without looking for it, without even offering anything in reciprocity. That is totally relevant at a certain time in our life. And that is often our core experience of love, our core feeling of love, certainly of personal love, of human love, of emotional mammalian love. And so that echoes through our consciousness, and it can be, as I said, it can be kind of unconscious that that's what we're actually looking for, or it can be conscious that that's what we're looking for. But the crux of what I want to say about this is when that's happening, say in your adult life, right? It could be through a challenge in relationships. It could be a challenge in health. It could be through a challenge in self-image, body stuff. It can be literally anything, right? But however that comes forward, where it feels like I don't know how to love myself in the way, say, I know it's possible to be loved. And you're probably referencing parental love at some point back in your past. It's like, I want that, but I don't have that. Well, if you process that as, or interpret that as, I need self-love. I need to be able to love myself in that same way. You may be just misunderstanding what's happening enough so that you overlook what you really want, right? And what I mean by that is you're never going to find that again, right? That's just not relevant for this point in your life. You're not going to find an other, a parent, a partner who's going to envelop you in love in that way, where you don't have to make decisions. You don't have to ask for anything. You're just automatically co-regulated when you show any bit of distress. Like, that's just not going to happen. It's not available. And if you think it's available, and you try to form relationships around that, you probably find out really quickly that's not going to work. Those relationships will blow up pretty quickly. That person's going to get tired of it. So that's just one aspect of how this can play out, but it's not the crux of what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is we feel like, okay, I need that somehow. And if someone else can't give it to me, I'm going to give it to myself. Which is fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that perception. But at this stage of life, you don't actually need that. I think it's helpful to see that you don't need that degree of being enveloped by another human, another mammal, someone who loves you and gives you all of their attention, and you're the most important thing in their world, and you're the center of their world. And if you just make a face or make a peep, you're going to get something. You're going to get some affection or love or attention. Like, that's not what you need as an adult. It's just not part of being an adult, right? I mean, you may get it at some point, but the ways you'd have to get that and the kind of interaction you'd have to have with another person to get that on any consistent basis is going to be dysfunctional. So why are we still looking for that? Well, again, because of that reflective nature of consciousness that can hold on to experiences that are so old. But this is the key in my opinion. There is a reason we're looking for that. And the reason we're looking for that is because that's the most peaceful we've ever felt. That's the most equanimous we've ever felt. That's the most relaxed we've ever felt. That's why we're looking for it. So it's not love you're looking for, because love, that kind of love, is not relevant at this point in your life. What is relevant is peace, equanimity, relaxation. And those are all totally available. Totally available. And when you feel those, when you're able to actually live with moment-to-moment peace, moment-to-moment equanimity, and as deeper realization clarifies and shadow work is done and so forth, it will become more and more your moment-to-moment experience. It does. Then you'll realize at some point, okay, this is what I really want. I wanted love because I thought love was going to give me this. Yeah. So I really find this to be the case. And I have this conversation with people not uncommonly. It's come up many times, this idea of like, why don't I love myself? How do I love myself? How do I love myself more? And there are aspects of that are important. Self-acceptance, a willingness to see what's there, a willingness to trust certain parts of yourself, a willingness to hold certain parts of yourself, a willingness to parent parts of yourself that were not properly parented all those years ago. There is a role for all of that. And that's what I call shadow work. That's what I call shadow work. So I'm not saying that those don't have a role. They do. But underneath all of that, that's not what you're really looking for. You're doing all that shadow work so that you can stop feeling like at odds with yourself constantly and at odds with the world and feeling unsettled and feeling unseen and feeling unloved and feeling not okay. That's why you do the shadow work. You're called to do it. Yeah. When all is said and done and that all calms down, you'll see underneath that what you really want is your natural state, which is equanimity, peace, flow, spontaneity, authenticity. That's what you want. Right. And all of those were true for that little tiny baby that was held in mother's arms or father's arms so fully, so completely that it really didn't have a care in the world. It just felt regulated, felt okay. It felt probably non-dualistic, probably merged with everything. Yeah. And that is totally available here. But I think sometimes we can get hung up on this idea of trying to love ourselves a certain way, which if we don't see why we're doing that and what's underneath it, it can be very confusing probably, because that's not probably what you really want. What you really want is to feel what you think that love is going to give you. And that is totally available. It's also your true nature. Let me know if this is helpful or if that was confusing.